From the Cactus KCTS, I'm Jamison Greenwood with Greenwood & Company. Well, I hope everybody's been having a good week. March is pretty close to an end here. Pretty soon it'll be Palm Sunday and Easter, and the heat's coming up, though. It's already in the hundreds here in Phoenix, a lot earlier than most of us expected it to be. But there is a very nice place in the north of Arizona where you can go to get away from that heat, and where I went not only to get away from the heat, but to go to college. But even though the heat is not as hot up there, there is an unfortunate risk of wildfires in northern Arizona with all the pine forests around. And one time, we found something burning, and although it didn't start a forest fire, it raised a whole lot of questions about what we should do. Heather Thaxton, a college friend of mine and first cousin to my love interest Annabelle, was a musical theater major, often cast as lead or featured role in some of the college musicals. In addition, she performed with the Pocket Squirrels, High Country University's improv troupe. At various times, Colton, Annabelle, and I would volunteer with the Squirrels as well, Colton sometimes improvising with Heather and the others, me handing out programs and selling refreshments, and Annabelle serving with Heather on the fundraising committee, which met at Brubeck's coffee shop every Friday morning. One such Friday, after a passionate but not very interesting lecture from Dr. Nash on William Faulkner's A Rose for Emily, I went for mid-morning coffee and a scone at Brubeck's, where Heather, Annabelle, and their friend Brianna were discussing financial matters. "So," Heather began, "the Nerf Wars fundraiser is coming up. We need to decide on a theme." "'60s sitcoms!" exclaimed Brianna. "I could go as Lucille Ball. I've got a red wig." Annabelle was skeptical. "Cool, but maybe a little too niche." Colton came to the counter with a steaming cup of black coffee and one of Heather's scones for me, along with a dime in change. I placed 3 $1 bills on the counter and slid the dime into my pocket before going to stir some half-and-half into my cup. I had planned to sit and compose some poetry about how much I hated the grim outlook of Faulkner's writings, but figured the polite thing to do would be greet my theater friends first. Shortly after exchanging pleasantries, Mr. Ibsen, Brubeck's aged owner, walked on the other side of the street with his cane and waved at us. "Old people," Heather suggested. "What about old people? That could be our theme." This idea was intriguing to me. Although college-aged, I was an old soul even then, with a love for antiquities, old music, and an unhealthy fascination with cataract surgery. "I'm not on the committee," I said, "but I think it's a good idea." "I'll second it," Brianna said. "I'm an old soul too, Jimmy." She held up the rust-colored scarf she'd been knitting during their meeting. "I'm a knitter. What do you expect?" "And you're addicted to Shakespeare," Heather replied. "Nah, I'm just doing Shakespeare to diversify. It's hard to make a living as an actor. You need to be as versatile as possible." Colton called from the counter when traffic died down. "My roommate and I've got some Nerf guns if you need 'em." "We've got some in the prop and costume room," Heather added, "but if you could go ahead and bring 'em, that would be great." "How much does it cost?" I asked. $5, Heather replied. I hesitated, but ultimately asked, in a whisper tone used among drug dealers, "Does this mean I can dress as an old person?" "Jimmy, I'm dressing like an old person," Brianna added. "We're both going to," said Annabelle, gesturing to her and Heather, and giving me one of her intoxicating smiles flavored with the lime green of her eyes. "Well, I'll be there." Heather and Annabelle picked me up in their Subaru on the day of the Nerf Wars, on which I donned my ultimate geezer outfit. A cream-colored golf shirt with maroon and gold stripes that screamed 1974, khakis, white New Balance tennis shoes, and a brown driving cap which belonged to my Grandpa Benson that Grammy had gifted to me on my last birthday. I considered buying a handsome oak cane from the mobility aids section at Walgreens, but I figured this was going too far, and the resident assistants of Tatum Hall might look at such an implement with suspicion. Heather wore a white bathrobe with pink flowers similar to one my mother had, and a set of hair curlers, while Annabelle had taken an eyebrow pencil and drawn a realistic assortment of wrinkles upon her face. But they did nothing to dampen the beauty of her green eyes, and went quite nicely with the turquoise sundress and burlap-colored duster she paired with her red sneakers. Colton and the other thespians met us at the Flagstaff Park near downtown Pine Bow, but we forgot that today was May the 4th. As a result of the May the 4th be with you lore that has come to be ubiquitous on that day of the year, many of our people came dressed as Star Wars characters, but this didn't pose much of a problem, as now we had two clear opposing teams, Old Souls versus the galaxy far, far away. Among those who did not get the memo were Zane, Brianna's boyfriend, who dressed as Luke Skywalker and brought along their dog, a Siberian Husky named Sondheim, and it seemed humorous for us to see the couple pitted against one another. "I may be old," Brianna smirked at her boyfriend, "but I can swing my 10 of clubs and my queen of spades with cutthroat precision." "Good thing we're using darts and not cards," Zane said. Brianna came over to our side and began filling one of the revolving Nerf guns Colton had brought with purple and green foam darts. "You're going down, Chewie." This despite the fact that Zane had clearly dressed as Luke Skywalker. "Shut up, old lady," Zane replied. It didn't help that Brianna was completely illiterate when it came to her boyfriend's favorite film franchise and the man who made him get into performing arts, George Lucas. The couple had pretty much everything in common. Growing up in Los Angeles, California, a love for their dog Sondheim, but no matter how much we love each other, it's impossible to agree 100% of the time. We set up our battlefield among a volleyball sand pit in the middle of the park, and each team practiced shooting each other and trying to evade shrapnel from the other side. Nerf Wars doesn't have many rules to it, but is essentially like dodgeball, where you need to shoot off as many darts while dodging as many as you can from the opponent's side. All of this wound up being good for Sondheim, at least to start. Siberian Huskies are known to be very headstrong dogs and will go and do whatever they want despite your stopping them, but the rapid flight of the different colored darts over the net and into the sand gave him a crippling decision paralysis for which ones to chase. That is, until his master, Zane, shot one orange and blue dart that went way out of bounds into a dense thicket about 50 feet from where the sand pit was. "Sondheim!" Zane screamed. "I gotta go get the dog." "I'll go with you," said Colton. "As will I." I followed them. Colton and I feared Sondheim would get lost and that Zane would need all the help he could get. "He's chipped," Zane assured us, "but he won't go far. He never does." As Zane suggested, we found Sondheim not long after, coming toward us from the thicket with the dart in his mouth, but something wasn't quite right. The area near the thicket was strangely warm, and we could see a faint white smoke nearby. Forest fires are unfortunately common in northern Arizona, but upon examining closer, we did not find a spreading inferno, but saw something that made our hearts skip a beat. A pile of burning kindling with a brick cylinder about a foot off the ground, which supported a large metal bucket that had ductwork attached to it, leading to a large glass jug. "A still," Zane exclaimed with a whisper. Now, we don't really need to whisper at the moment, but we do have to take a short break, but once we come back, we'll go over what happened once we found that still. You are listening to Greenwood and Company on KCTS. Hello, I'm Jamison Greenwood. If you enjoy Greenwood and Company, be sure to follow and share wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back with more Greenwood and Company right after this. Do you take time to deep clean the house each spring, but it just ends up churning the dirt and not getting rid of it? Well, if you're tired of the dirt sticking around, it's time to call Angie Ammonia. Our highly trained staff of barflies and recently released convicts use our patent-pending, highly caustic cleansers for walls, carpets, the kitchen and bathroom to give you a squeaky clean home that will make your friends faint from jealousy and asphyxiation. So for all your spring cleaning needs, evacuate your home and call Angie Ammonia. Warning, Angie's Ammonia is not licensed or bonded by any U.S. state or Canadian province. Please review your homeowner's policy prior to use. Accidental incineration of your home due to our chemicals may not be covered. And welcome back. You are listening to Greenwood and Company on the Cactus, KCTS. Now, before the break, we had just gone to find Zane and Brianna's dog Sondheim, and when we went and found him, we also found a still burning in the middle of a thicket in the woods. Most of us had read of stills either through the works of Mark Twain or, in my case, through the country station my dad used to listen to in his truck, which often played George Jones' song White Lightning about an illegal hooch distributor. We were aware enough of stills to know they were illegal, but never expecting to find one in the wild, we faced a dilemma. Should we step away from it? Colton asked. No, we can't. Colton, of course, was active in environmentalist circles and happened to be wearing a Smokey the Bear t-shirt. If the flames of the still were to spread to the surrounding ponderosas, and the winds were to kick up, Colton could never live with the shame of his hypocrisy, nor the depth of the scratches he would endure from Smokey's claws. Well, should we call the police? I asked. Before we do, Zane said, let's get some of that hooch. Colton and I both thought he was joking, but at that moment Zane began walking toward the downward pipe, over the jug, his hands cupped like a bowl to catch some of that red-hot alcohol. Zane! Colton exclaimed. You don't know what's in that stuff? Zane abandoned his mission for the moonshine, but only because Sondheim got in the way. Are you okay if I call the police? I asked. No one seemed to be making any moves on this matter, so I figured it would have to be me. Okay, Zane resigned, knowing he'd never get a taste of that hillbilly moonshine. Should we put out the fire? Colton asked. I'll go get my water bottle. Yeah, it'll cool faster, Zane said. Then we can— Let's leave it, I replied. Colton and Michael gave a puzzled look to me, but they were reassured when I explained my conjecture that putting out the fire could be seen as tampering with the evidence. I would be okay putting the fire out if the winds kicked up, but the breeze was relatively steady and the fire seemed to be under control, so I figured we should leave it unless it was a genuine emergency. I contacted the Pine Bow Police Department, and the dispatcher sent out Officer Leakey, who was delayed in getting to us as he had to stop at the log cabin pit toilet to take a leak before coming to meet us. Afternoon, gentlemen, Officer Leakey grunted, tipping his hat. Mr. Skywalker, looking at Zane. What seems to be the trouble? Well, I said, we found a still. We didn't put the fire out because we're afraid we'd be tampering with the evidence, Colton said. Well, I would have put it out. My heart sank to know that I, a clean-cut church-going coffee drinker, was about to get arrested by a police officer for leaving a fire risk. But I see where you're coming from. No worries. Now, did you see anyone operating the still? Some guy in a beanie, overalls, and a stalk of wheat coming out of his mouth? Colton, Zane, and I looked at each other and shook our heads. I expected Officer Leakey would call for backup and request a search of the area, but instead he got a megaphone from the squad car, turned it on, and asked, Does this still belong to anyone in this park? The three of us looked wide-eyed at the constable, then at each other. I said, does this still belong to anyone in this here park? After a few seconds, Leakey decided, Nope, let's just put out the fire. Officer Leakey then asked us to turn around, and we heard a faint trickle of water. When he told us we could turn around, he was still zipping up his fly. Fire's out! Officer Leakey had used his weak bladder in a creative way. The three of us were dazed for a moment. Then Zane asked, Can we— He was about to ask the officer if he could try some of the Appalachian ambrosia, but before he could, Officer Leakey took the jug, walked over to a nearby road, and poured it down a storm sewer. From there, he dropped the jug in the recycle, kicked the rest of the metal components over with his feet, and tossed them in the recycle as well before returning to his Crown Victoria squad car. May the 4th be with you, gents. Although there was no question of Zane's devastation at never tasting the moonshine, the three of us were relieved that we had caught the still, avoided a forest fire, and getting arrested. However, we were a little concerned about the dedication on the part of the Pine Bow Police, or lack thereof, despite clear evidence of a good sense of humor. Then Sondheim, who had remained uncharacteristically quiet and still for a Siberian husky in the wake of this whole escapade, let his curiosity and his headstrong heart get the better of him. He began sniffing the spot that Officer Leakey had taken a leak upon, where the fire had been burning moments before, and let out a short bark of contempt. He then repositioned his rump, lifted his leg, and oversprayed Officer Leakey's fluids with his own. If the ownership of the still was in question before, there was no doubt that its rightful owner now was Sondheim, the Siberian Husky. You are listening to Greenwood and Company on KCTS. When you have no time for a balanced, nutritious breakfast, Sunrise Jiggle is the thing for you. Now, instead of having to fry bacon and eggs, cut strawberries, and bake biscuits, you can have all three rolled into one with Sunrise Jiggle gelatin breakfasts. Bits of scrambled egg, bacon, and biscuit floating in a sweet strawberry gelatin give you all the benefits of a nutritious breakfast without the multi-step hassle or kitchen cleanup. Also doubles as the perfect poison counterdose if you should need to induce vomiting. Sunrise Jiggle gelatin breakfasts are available in this and many other flavors in the refrigerated section of Gigit supermarkets and other subpar retailers. Support for Greenwood and Company and the Cactus, KCTS, comes from the Used Car Salesman Plaid Sport Coat Foundation, the Save the Floppy Disks Foundation, and the Folding Chair Charitable Trusts, along with support from the Society for Cats with Mathematics Test Anxiety. Well, as I think of our opposing teams in the Nerf Wars, we had the Old Soul team and the Star Wars team, and I find that often souls, once they have departed this world, it is my belief that perhaps they do take to some extent a route among the stars, which inspired this poem, where I hope the poem itself will make up for the title. It's a simple piece called Stars, Poem Number 3. Each night above, the skies of indigo are filled with many burning specks of light. They treat us to a dazzling, sparkling show, above where owls and griffins take their flight. Like human beings or tiny flakes of snow, stars each have special ways of shining bright. Like actresses and actors we admire, their beauty and their talents touch our hearts. Their presence at our table we desire, drive them round in velvet horse-drawn carts. Though only light years distant balls of fire, they touch our souls, within us flames they start. We can't see their reactions to our awe, but they appreciate it nonetheless. Our admiration's angels' hearts they thaw, while cataloguing, praying 'bout our stress. Last night the angels spied through stars and saw those humans they've been charged by God to bless. That brings an end to this week's Greenwood and Company. Our show was created and hosted by yours truly and was written by him along with James Salison and Minnesota Martinez. The engineer is Ivan Crosby. Jonas Andrews answers the phones even though we don't take calls on this program. The theme was composed by Martin Landstrom, and our costumes are provided by Grandma's Garage Thrift Shop. All the characters, settings, and situations depicted in this program, along with all advertised products, are entirely fictional, and any similarities to products, events, or persons, living or dead, is entirely coincidental. Also, KCTS is not an actual radio station. Be sure to visit our website at JamisonGreenwoodPodcast.com to learn more about Greenwood and Company, and make sure to follow us on the podcast platform of your choice and share with your friends on social media. Just a reminder to please be careful if you are going out on the 101, the 17, or Route 66 tonight. I'm Jamison Greenwood, and until we meet again, stay healthy, stay safe, and stay young at heart. Good night. This is KCTS FM Phoenix. Stay tuned for Lacking in Substance.